Well, hi, hello, how's it going? I hope things are awesome and wonderful wherever you find yourself today. My name is Crystal Sky, and like many of you out there, I find myself morbidly drawn to true crime cases. I think for me, it's sort of like the psychology of it all. Like, the human brain is so fascinating, and it just, boggles my mind how a human being can come to a point in their life that they take another human being's life. It's just wild to me. And I think that's why when I look up true crime cases, that's why I like to try to find out, where these killers come from. Who are they? How does this happen? How? How does a human being come to a point where they kill someone else? I don't know. I'm sure that's not a unique perspective to have. I would be very interested to know what draws you to true crime cases. Let me know in the comments down below. And yeah, so I wanted to start this YouTube channel to talk about some true crime cases that, I've stumbled across and think are worthy of a discussion. And I want to give a special shout out to two of my all-time favorite true crime YouTubers. These ladies have really sort of inspired me to make my own true crime videos, and I am of course talking about the queens, Bailey Saren and Danielle Kirsty. And just in case you haven't, you should go subscribe to their channels because they are awesome. And another reason I wanted to start this channel was sort of to kind of keep up my production skills. That's what my background is in production and editing and kind of filmmaking. And I also wanted to sort of push myself outside of my comfort zone. I'm usually a behind the camera type of person, like a behind the scenes type. I'm not really comfortable in front of the camera. And I thought this would be a, cool, creative, interesting way to sort of, push myself outside of that comfort zone. So yeah, if you like true crime and this seems like something you'd be interested in, well, pull up a seat and we'll get into today's case. Now, two disclaimers that I will be giving before each of my videos. One, we are talking about true crime cases, so, we're talking about, adult content, mature content. Today's case specifically has, talks of sexual assault, sexual abuse, animal cruelty, so be forewarned. My second disclaimer is, unlike Bailey and Danielle, I am in no way, shape, or form a makeup artist or influencer or anything like that, which, believe me, will become evident when I start slapping this stuff on my face. I just usually kind of plop down and kind of see what happens. But if you, are curious what I am using, I'll go ahead and list it in the box below. So with all of that said and done, let's get into today's case. Now, today's case is a serial killer from my home state of California, and I wanted to do this case because, one, I've never heard of this guy, and it just kind of boggles my mind when you hear about the details of it. And I also wanted to do it because I found out that this guy lived and killed in areas all throughout the state of California, some areas which I have lived in. And you know how it goes, when you hear a true crime case that occurred in a place that, you're familiar with, or, that you live nearby or in, it sort of hits different, right? So that's why I wanted to do today's case. So let's get into it. So today's case begins on November 3rd, 1998. A man walks into the Humboldt County Sheriff's Department located in Eureka, California, and I actually lived there for a brief period. Eureka is in the northern part of California. It's up there near the Oregon border. So this guy walks in to the Humboldt County Sheriff's Department, and he, flags down an officer and proceeds to confess to not one, not two, but 4 murders. Yeah, I don't know how often a serial killer walks into a police department to turn themselves in, but yeah, that happened. And if that wasn't wild enough, he then proceeds to whip out a Ziploc bag from his coat pocket, and inside the Ziploc bag is a severed woman's breast. Yeah. This man's name is Wayne Adam Ford, and because that he walked into a police department and turned himself in, he has garnered himself the moniker Serial Killer with a Conscience. Yeah, so buckle up. So, Wayne Adam Ford was born December 3rd, 1961 in Petaluma, California, to parents Bridget and Calvin Eugene Ford. Now, there's not a lot known about Bridget other than that she was a German immigrant, and I think she might have been a stay-at-home mom. But Calvin was a staff sergeant in the Army. He served for 13 years and retired in 1969. Wayne also has an older brother named Rodney, who said that he was pretty close to, had a pretty good relationship with. Now, there's not a whole lot known about Wade's childhood, and of what there is known, there's some minor inconsistencies, so we'll get into that. So Wayne's parents divorced when he was about 12 years old, and when his parents divorced, it is said that Bridget just sort of took off and wasn't really part of her son's lives, and that she left to travel the world for 6 years. And I read that this, type of abandonment by his mother really had like a profound emotional impact on Wayne. And it was compounded by the fact that he didn't really get along with his dad at all. Now, I also read a different account that he just sort of bounced back and forth between his parents. That, I guess Bridget was part of his life, and that he bounced back and forth between his parents throughout his childhood, and that both of his parents remarried at some point. But his father's second marriage, for whatever reason, was really upsetting to Wayne, and that he actually stayed with an Uncle Jimmy for a period of time. Now, again, I'm not sure, what exactly is true there. It was really weird to come across these, minor indiscrepancies when I was trying to find out more information about him. But, it is what it is. Wayne has gone on to describe his mother as cold and distant, and his father as the type of man to strike fear whenever he was around. So, seems like the common thread is that, Wayne did not have a close relationship with either of his parents, and he did kind of bounce around a lot. So, that seems to be kind of like the main thread there. He attended Eureka High School in 1977, but he did not graduate from there. Again, another weird indiscrepancy. I read that he actually graduated from Arcata High School in 1980, and Arcata is just the neighboring town to Eureka. In 1979, Wayne enlisted in the Marines, and he had aspirations of being a career soldier. And Wayne actually excelled in the Marines for quite a little bit. He rose to the rank of sergeant, but he was demoted back down to corporal according to military records. He was trained as a chemical weapons specialist. So, yeah, it seemed like he had a pretty decent career in the Marines despite being demoted. In May of 1981, Wayne would go on to marry his first wife when he was 19 years old. Her name was Karen Kelly Dick, and she later went by Kelly Pletcher. And the relationship was, very tumultuous. It was, a very, whirlwind romance, a quick courtship, quick engagement, and ultimately a quick marriage. The couple divorced in 1984, and Kelly has actually gone on to do some interviews describing her brief marriage to Wayne. Now, according to Kelly, she said Wayne's attitude towards her and the relationship drastically changed after they got married. It was just like a 180. Wayne was very sexually aggressive with her and forced her to partake in sexual acts that she just wasn't really all that comfortable with. Wayne was really, really into like BDSM and sexual asphyxiation. And look, we don't kink shame here, different strokes for different folks. However, one thing that you will find in any kink community is what? Consent. And that's not what we have here. He would force Kelly to, participate in severe bondage and stuff like that. And she wasn't down for that, In January of 1982, Wayne is arrested. He is arrested for the attempted rape of a 15-year-old girl. Now, the report I read, all it said was it was forced oral copulation, so I don't know if he forced himself on her or vice versa, but thankfully she was able to run away. However, nothing came of this arrest, like no official charges were filed or anything like that, so have no idea what happened in regards to that. So, like I said, eventually Kelly got tired of Wayne's BS and left him in 1984. And for Kelly, she did end up going on to have a, relatively normal, happy, fulfilling life. Shortly after leaving Wayne, she found a very nice man by the name of Bob, who she said really helped her kind of heal from kind of like the trauma that Wayne had inflicted her with. And they ended up having a very long-term, intimate relationship. They even had a child together. However, they did end up separating, and Kelly was diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer that did take her life in 2020, unfortunately. Yeah, sorry to kind of end her story on a little bit of a bummer, but at least she was able to get away from Wayne and all of his nonsense and go on to, live a relatively normal, happy life. So good for her. Rest in peace, Kelly. Now, when Kelly left Wayne, he was not happy about it. He even briefly stalked her for a little bit because he just, could not accept that the relationship ended. And it started affecting his work. Remember, Wayne is still in the Marines at this point, and his work performance started slacking off, the quality in his work started going down, and he started, copping an attitude, which, it's a big no-no in the military. So, obviously, his superiors noticed this and was like, all right, go get evaluated, go talk to someone. They figured Wayne was, he was just having a hard time with the divorce. They just, they figured he was just, bitter about the divorce, and he just needed to go talk to someone and get his head on straight, and things would be fine. So Wayne does go to talk to someone, and he is diagnosed at this point with depression and alcoholism. Now, Wayne is transferred to a naval hospital in San Diego because apparently he had expressed some suicidal thoughts, some suicidal ideations. So they transferred him there for observation, and he was there for several months. Yeah, I think it was just several months. I don't think he was there for like a year or anything like that. So he was there for, several months. And once he showed signs of recovery, the Marines dispatched him on assignment, and he was dispatched to Okinawa, Japan. Now, when Wayne gets to Japan, he's only there for about a month before his mental health really takes a decline for the worse. So, there's an incident reported where Wayne failed an inspection, and so, he's getting reprimanded by a commanding officer, as, one would expect being in the military and failing an inspection. But Wayne, he was not having it. He was not having it, and it is said he became very violent and confrontational with his CO, and later he was found in his barracks, huddled in the corner in the fetal position, refusing to speak. Yeah, so not good at all. They obviously sent him to go get evaluated because clearly something's not right. But this time, Wayne isn't down. Wayne isn't down to talk to someone. He doesn't want to get treatment, and he is violent and confrontational and actually briefly escapes the facility before being caught and forced to undergo treatment. And here, Wayne is diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and atypical psychosis. The doctors specifically said that Wayne had, quote, adjustment reaction with mixed features and a personality disorder with explosive and immature features. Which, out of everything that we know of Wayne so far, that kind of seems like a pretty accurate assessment, right? So Wayne is shipped back to the Naval Hospital in San Diego, and in January of 1985, Wayne is honorably discharged from the Marines due to his mental health. So after Wayne is discharged from the Marines, he just kind of drifts around California, just, working odd jobs here and there. And he worked a bunch of odd jobs. He worked on boats, he worked at a motorcycle shop, a car dealership, he delivered newspapers. He worked a lot of odd jobs. He didn't stay in one place too long, like 2 to 3 years. And in January of 1986, so only a year after he's been discharged from the Marines, Wayne is arrested yet again. Yeah, arrested yet again. This time, he is arrested for robbing, raping, and beating a sex worker in Garden Grove, California. But, like with that earlier arrest, nothing seems to have come from that. There's nothing, so I don't know what happened. I don't know how this guy keeps getting away with being arrested with serious charges and just walking away scot-free, but there you have it. In 1990, one of the odd jobs that Wayne gets is as a bus driver. But get this, it's a school bus driver. Yeah, Wayne was responsible for transporting children. Yeah. He worked for the San Capistrano Unified School District, and he took children to and from the R.H. Dana Exceptional Needs Facility located in Dana Point, California. Now, some of his coworkers have come out and described what it was like working with Wayne. They said that he was, quiet but friendly and obviously very eager to do a good job. And there was actually an incident reported that happened while Wayne was transporting the kids. So apparently a kid started bleeding from the mouth. There was no further details about that, just the kid started bleeding from his mouth. And Wayne, it is said, pulled over, tended to the child, called paramedics, and comforted him until help could arrive. Now, after the events of today's case came to light, his coworkers were sort of retroactively creeped out. They couldn't believe that this guy was ever in charge of children. Yeah. So, during the 3 years that Wayne was a bus driver, he was introduced to one of his favorite hobbies, which was karaoke. Yes, Wayne loved to sing and play music, and he was introduced to karaoke from a very good friend of his who was, get this, a professional Elvis impersonator. Yeah, I wonder what kind of work stories that guy has. So this guy was a really good friend to Wayne, and it said that, Wayne kind of had a bromance going on with him. He really looked up to this guy, thought he was really cool ladies man. And this friend would actually end up introducing Wayne to who would eventually become his second wife, and we'll get to her in just one moment. So at some point between 1990 and 1995, Wayne takes another odd job, this time as a tow truck driver working the graveyard shift in San Clemente, California. And there is an incident where police are called. Once again, Wayne is in trouble with the law. Okay, brace yourself. This is where the animal cruelty comes into play. He shot and killed the company's guard dog. I know. Now, Wayne claims that he shot the dog in self-defense, He said the dog was barking and charging at him, and he feared for his life, so he had to shoot him. He had to shoot him in self-defense. Now, the tow truck manager, though, didn't buy Wayne's story, and in fact, he contradicted it. He said, no. That's not what happened at all. He claimed that Wayne was in a very bad mood that day, and he was very annoyed and ticked off that the dog would not stop barking. And so Wayne went out there in the yard with his gun and shot the poor dog. And not just shot him, continued shooting the dog, emptying his gun long after the dog was dead. So, yeah. So, Wayne is arrested for animal cruelty, and he actually pleads guilty. So, all right, finally, Wayne gets arrested, and some charges come of it. So, he pleads guilty to animal cruelty, and he serves a whopping 1 week jail sentence. Yeah, after everything he's done this far, that's what he gets nailed for, and that's what his sentence is, 1 week in jail. So, also around this time, Wayne's sexual behavior, it's escalating, and not in a good way. So, Wayne had an on-again, off-again girlfriend around this time that he stayed with, and there is a story that is reported that she came home one day, and Wayne was playing cards with a couple of teenagers. I'm like, okay, it's not too sketch, I guess. So I guess he saw this teenage couple. They had broken down on the side of the road, and Wayne had pulled over to, help them out because, he's such a good Samaritan. And so, took them to his home, and they were playing cards. I don't know if they were waiting for help or what, but Wayne was playing cards with these teenagers in his boxer shorts. Yeah, and not just that, Wayne had his testicles hanging out in plain view. Yeah, Wayne was hanging brain in front of a couple of teenagers. And, when his girlfriend came home and was just like, dude, like, what the F? Like, what's going on? Rightfully so. It is said that Wayne just replied that he did it because he liked to see the girl's reaction. Yeah. There are also reports around this time of Wayne masturbating in front of young girls and peeping in on young women. So, dude's a creep, and it's not good. So, in 1994, 32-year-old Wayne marries 21-year-old Elizabeth Alt. That is the woman that his friend had introduced him to, was Elizabeth, and the two got married in Las Vegas, and a year later, in December of 1995, their only son was born, whose name was Max. He was born in Mission Viejo. And much like his marriage to Kelly, the marriage to Elizabeth drastically changed after the two got married. So there is a specific nasty incident that is reported. So while Elizabeth was 5 months pregnant, Wayne raped her. Yeah, so Elizabeth ran to her mom's house and stayed with her for a little bit. And it is said that what really frightened Elizabeth was the cold indifference with which Wayne had raped her. Now, Elizabeth would end up going back to Wayne. Their relationship was very on again, off again, even after this incident. And look, I know it's easy to sit here on the outside and kind of victim blame and be like, how could you go back to someone who would do that? But, let's remember, Elizabeth was 21, she's pregnant, she's probably scared, so it's just, if you haven't been in that type of relationship or that type of position, I think it's just best not to judge. So not only were they on again, off again, Wayne also, like he did with Kelly, expected Elizabeth to partake in sexual acts that she wasn't really all that comfortable with. And this behavior is even has escalated even more since he was with Kelly. He forced Elizabeth to have sex with strange men in front of him and poked her breasts with hot needles. Oh, and I did forget to say, when he was married to Kelly, he had even made molds of her breasts at one point using hot wax. So, yeah, Wayne obviously has something to do with breasts. He would, poke Elizabeth's breasts with hot needles. And on top of being just a predator and just an all-around creep, you're not going to be surprised to know that Wayne was also a misogynist. He expected Elizabeth to keep the house clean, take care of the kid, and cook him 3 square meals a day. Yeah, not really shocking. Now, thankfully, Elizabeth finally got sick of Wayne's BS, and she left him in 1996. She left to go stay with her parents in Las Vegas, and she took Max with her, while Wayne moved up to Arcata and moved into a mobile home park. Now, when he moved into the mobile home park, he moved next door to a local man by the name of Dan Ames. He had been in the area for about 19 years. He was a local concrete pourer, and Dan has gone on to describe what it was like living next door to Wayne. He said Wayne was, kind of like how his former co-workers described him, quiet and friendly, always ready with a cigarette and a joke, according to Dan. But he also said that Wayne was obviously very troubled. He was obviously very bitter about his divorce and would constantly complain about Elizabeth and how, she was this, she was that, she was keeping his son away from him, and was very bitter about the divorce. And it's like, Wayne, if you don't want people to leave you, maybe don't abuse them, maybe don't treat them like objects. Just a thought. But I digress. Locals and neighbors of Wayne also described him much the same way. Quiet and friendly, and he could be good for a laugh and stuff, but obviously very troubled and very bitter about the divorce with Elizabeth. Now, the mobile home park that Wayne had moved into was located next to the Mad River, and it was sandwiched between 2 concrete companies. And Wayne got a job as a truck driver at one of these companies called Arcata Ready Mix. And at some point in 97, 98, there was an economic downturn, and Wayne was laid off. But he quickly got another job, a long-haul truck driving job with Edeline Enterprises. And because he was a long-haul trucker, his truck bed came with, lots of amenities, including 2 beds and a refrigerator, among other stuff. And so at this point, we're going to kind of deviate away from Wayne for just a little bit. So, let's go to October 26th, 1997. A duck hunter is canoeing down the Ryan Slough River, which is near Eureka, and, he's canoeing along, and he notices what he thinks is a mannequin on the bank of the river in some shrubs. It's a little weird in the middle of the forest. There's a mannequin. So as this duck hunter gets closer, he realizes, oh snaps, that's not a mannequin, that's a human body. Not just that, it was a human torso with the head, arms, and legs missing. I can't imagine being in the wilderness, just minding my own business and stumbling across that. It gives me goosebumps just thinking about that. How creepy and traumatizing would that be? So the duck hunter whips out his mobile phone and calls the police. And, remember, this is 1997, so not everyone has a cellular phone, so he is up to date on it. He calls the police, and they fish the torso out of the river. They see that it belongs to a woman, and not only are her head, arms, and legs missing, so too are her breasts. She had been sliced down the middle to the point that she had been completely disemboweled. There was about 30 stab wounds all over her torso. And, because there was no, head or hands for fingerprints and no tattoos or body mark or birthmarks or anything like that. They had no way to identify her, so she was just given the moniker Sonoma County Jane Doe. Or excuse me, Humboldt County Jane Doe. So they took her to the coroner's office and they were able to determine a few things about her. They were able to determine that she was somewhere between the ages of 18 and 25. She was a non-smoker. She had given birth at some point, and she had a dark complexion. And they also discovered that she had been dead for several days before her discovery. And about 3 months after the autopsy was performed, her hands did wash up on the coast. I think it was further down the coast. However, they were so badly decomposed, they couldn't use it for fingerprints, and to this day, Jane Doe has never been identified. About 8 months later, in June of 1998, another woman's body is found, whole body this time. She was nude, and she was found floating in the California Aqueduct located near the town of Buttonwillow, California. The remains were taken to the coroner's office, and they were able to determine that she had been dead for several days prior to her discovery, and that the cause of death was likely strangulation. And it was also found that she had been sexually assaulted. And because this was a whole body this time, they were able to identify her, and she was identified as 26-year-old Tina Renee Gibbs, who was originally from Tacoma, Washington. Her mother was Mary Ellen Sharp, and her stepfather was Ronald Sharp. And they described their daughter as, loving camping trips when she was younger. She also loved visiting the nursing home where her mother worked and loved, entertaining and talking with the patients there. When Tina was 18, she met the wrong man and ended up falling into drug addiction and ended up running away from home. And she ended up doing sex work in order to support her habit. And she had been working as a sex worker in Las Vegas in the months leading up to her disappearance. 4 months after Tina's body was found, on September 25th, 1998, another woman's nude body was found, this time in an irrigation ditch located off the Interstate 5 near Lodi, California. And there were several items found nearby. There was bloodied women's clothing, some hair samples, and a white plastic bag with the Flying J logo on it. And the Flying J is just a chain of truck stops. And so they got her to the coroner's office where they performed an autopsy. And much like with Jane Doe and with Tina, she had been dead for several days prior to her discovery. They theorized that she had not died there, that she had been thrown from a moving vehicle. There was evidence of strangulation, and there were puncture marks on her breasts. This woman would later be identified as 25-year-old Lynette White of Fontana, California. Her parents were Deborah and Bill White, and Deborah described the last time she saw her daughter. Lynette had come over because it was a few days before Deborah's birthday, and Lynette had made her a homemade cake with white icing and Skittles strewn all over it, and she promised her mother that she would see her in a couple days for her actual birthday. But, unfortunately, she would never see her daughter. Lynette was a mother of 4. She worked a night job at a warehouse and had just gotten a new job selling home interior products that she was very excited about. Lynette was last seen on September 20th by one of her cousins. She was going to go walk up to the store. She didn't have a car yet, so she was going to go take the short walk to the store to get some milk for her 9-month-old baby, and that was the last her family had seen of her. Finally, on October 23rd, 1998, another woman's body is found in another aqueduct, this time in the town of Hesperia. And She was found by two security guards who saw an object bobbing in the water, and as they got closer, they realized that, it was a body. And when the police arrived and fished her out of the aqueduct, they were shocked to see that one of her breasts had been removed. Much like with Lynette, there were several items found upstream nearby that investigators theorized were part of the crime scene, including women's clothing, a bloodied tarp, and a .22 caliber air pistol that authorities said was part of the crime scene, even though no pistol was used. I don't know. That's just what I read. So they bring her to the coroners, and they were able to determine that this poor woman underwent severe trauma prior to her death. They found evidence that she had been bound, raped, and beaten. She had blunt force trauma to her head, and her breast had been removed, and her back had been broken before she was strangled to death. This woman was identified as 29-year-old Patricia Ann Temez. Now, Patricia had a child, and she had hopes of being a nurse. However, she did struggle with drug addiction, specifically to methamphetamine, and she had been doing sex work to fund her habit. She had been seen the day prior working the corner of 6th and D Street in Victorville, California. So let's now go to November 2nd, 1998. So it's a little more than a week since Patricia had been found, and Wayne went to the Ocean Grove Lodge. It's a bar/motel/restaurant located off the 101 highway in Trinidad, California, and Trinidad is just a little further north than Eureka. So Wayne stops in and has a couple drinks, and he drinks a lot. He orders rum and cokes, Irish coffees, beers. He strikes up a conversation with a woman named Sandy Box, who was a nurse's aide. And, much like, Wayne does, complaining about his ex-wife and, how she was keeping him away from his son. And, they ended up talking for a couple hours. And when Sandy was ready to leave, Wayne offered to give her a ride. Now, something just wasn't really right with Sandy. There was something that just didn't feel right to her. And so, thankfully, she declined Wayne's offer. And she left. And Wayne continued to stay at the bar and continue to drink. He played pool with the owner and was just sort of going off about how depressed he was, how he wanted to blow his brains out, and, just being very, very sad drunk. Finally, Wayne went to the payphone and called his older brother, Rodney. Remember, he had an older brother, Rodney, who he was pretty close to. So he calls his brother and is just like, hey man, I'm really not doing well right now, and I could really use someone to talk to. So Rod, being the good brother that he is, makes the 5-hour car trip to go talk to his brother. Now, when Rod gets there, he can't really get a whole lot out of Wayne. He just, keeps saying how sad he is and how he wants to blow his brains out, and he won't really, elaborate further. So finally, Rod's like, all right, look, it's late, I'm super tired, you've been drinking, let's get a room, we'll sleep, and let's come out this in the morning with, fresh set of eyes. So they do. The next morning, they, stay in the hotel room a little bit, and then him and Rod go driving around Eureka to, visit, old childhood haunts and stuff that they had visited. And, so during that whole time, Rod's trying to, get Wayne to open up a little bit. But all he could get out of Wayne was that he had, quote, hurt people. And he was afraid that he was going to hurt more people. And he wouldn't elaborate further on that. So Rod's like, okay, well, you're telling me you, actually hurt people, like you're not being metaphorical. Well, I do know, I don't know what you've done exactly, but I do know that you need to turn yourself in. And so it takes a little bit of convincing, but Rod talks Wayne into going to the Humboldt County Sheriff's Department to admit to what he has done. And that's where our story opened up with. And, remember, when Wayne confessed to these murders, no one had any idea that these 4 women were connected in any way. Like, they had no idea. They had happened all throughout the state of California, different jurisdictions and whatnot. So no one even knew. And, Rod didn't know either. So, like when Wayne whipped out that Ziploc bag with Patricia's breast in it, he was just as floored and shocked as the police were. So during interviews with police, Wayne did reveal some of the locations of where he had stored some of Jane Doe's body parts. He said that he had buried her head and arms on the bank of the Mad River. He had dismembered her body in his bathtub using saws and knives, and had kept her body in his freezer for up to a year before discarding some of the body parts at a campsite in Trinidad. So investigators naturally went to these locations, and they were unfortunately unable to locate Jane Doe's head. It is theorized that because Wayne had buried her head on the bank of the Mad River, that it had, given way and washed away into the river. They were able to locate about 8 or 9 body parts that they could link to Jane Doe at that campsite. And Wayne told police that Jane Doe had been a hitchhiker that he picked up in Eureka. He said that he drove her to his trailer where they engaged in some rough sex, and that, somehow she just ended up dead. Like, he didn't know how that happened. They were doing some rough sex, and he was, doing his sexual asphyxiation thing, and he, quote, blacked out. And when he came to, she was dead. Now, obviously, I'm sure you're thinking the same thing as me. No, there was nothing consensual about this. I'm sure he kidnapped her and brought her to his trailer and raped her and killed her. That's my personal thing, but I digress. That is what Wayne tells police. And when they go to his trailer to collect evidence, they found it. They found a bunch of evidence. In a coffee can in Wayne's kitchen, they found rendered fat that was from Jane Doe's breasts. Yeah. So Wayne claims that he did not eat her. He's not a cannibal. No, he's just a rapist and a murderer. That he did not try to eat her. And I don't know why else you would try to cook human body parts if not to eat them. I don't know. Maybe he thought it would be easier to dispose of her. I don't know. But that's what they found. They also found other evidence that linked him to the other murders, including a white plastic bag with the Flying J logo on it. Remember, they found that near Lynette's body. Wayne said that he picked Lynette up at an Ontario truck stop, and that her death had actually occurred in San Bernardino County in California, and that with her body in his truck, he had driven from San Bernardino County to Phoenix before disposing of her body off the Interstate 5 in Lodi, where she was found. And Lynette's head was actually in a severe state of decomposition, and that is because her head had been resting on his hot floorboards of his truck in the Southern California and Arizona heat for several days. Now, initially, Wayne did not want to cooperate with the police. Cooperate with the police. And it was actually Rod who talked Wayne into cooperating more with the police. And in fact, when they were, waiting for a brief period to talk to an investigator, that he actually wanted to take off. But Rod talked Wayne out of it. And when he was in the middle of his confession, Wayne eventually stopped and wanted a lawyer, and it is reported that it was Rod who talked Wayne into confessing everything to the police without a lawyer present. So even though Wayne pretty much offered himself up on a silver platter to police and, said that he deserved and wanted the death penalty, at his preliminary hearing, his lawyer put in a plea of not guilty. And, when reporters asked his defense attorney, rightfully so, like, are you kidding me? Not guilty? All his defense attorney would say is, that's how the process works. I don't know. So Wayne's trial wouldn't begin until 2006. Yeah. So Wayne confesses in the tail end of 1998, but doesn't go on trial until 2006. And one of the reasons for this, really long gap in between Wayne's confession and his trial, is that, like I said, Wayne had committed these crimes all up and down the state of California. So there was different jurisdictions. And so prosecutors had to figure out, okay, how do we prosecute him? Where do we prosecute him? How are we going to go about doing this? And it was ultimately decided that Wayne would be prosecuted in San Bernardino County, and that all of the charges and everything would all be condensed into one trial. And they were able to do this because of a relatively new at the time law that California had passed. It's been referred to as the serial killer law. And basically, it just allows prosecutors to do what I just said. Take all these different crimes that happened in different jurisdictions and kind of condense them into one trial. And Wayne's case was actually the first case to use this law. So Wayne would be prosecuted by Deputy District Attorney David Mazurek, and he was defended by Deputy Public Defender Joseph Canty. And like I said, so he put in a plea of not guilty, and at his trial, so they couldn't, they couldn't say that Wayne didn't do these crimes. They had his confession that was admissible in court. At least part of his confessions were admissible in court, so, the defense couldn't say oh, Wayne didn't do these. Instead, they tried to sort of explain away why this happened. So, the defense was saying that on top of all of his documented mental health problems and whatnot, another reason why Wayne did this was he had a significant brain injury that really changed who he was. They claimed that an accident happened in about 1983, 1984, when Wayne was married to Kelly. And they said that one day, on the way home, Wayne and Kelly ran into a two-car accident on the freeway. And so they pulled over to assist. Wayne got out to assist while Kelly drove to the next exit and got help. Now, Kelly actually testified at Wayne's trial, and she did testify that this accident happened. She said that she was gone for, maybe 15, 20 minutes to, call authorities. And when she got back to the accident, Wayne was nowhere to be found. And she had assumed that Wayne had hitched a ride back to the El Toro Marine Base, where Wayne was stationed at the time. He was still in the Marines at this time. And so she just went back to her dorm room at UC Irvine, and it wasn't until the next morning when she got a phone call from the hospital that she found out what had happened to Wayne. Apparently, Wayne had been struck by a drunk driver and had received a significant head injury. Now, there's some small minor inconsistencies in Kelly's testimony in her initial statement to police versus what she testified to at trial. So in her initial testament to police, she said that Wayne had been in a coma for 9 days, but at trial, she said that Wayne had actually not lost consciousness at all, but that his head was like swollen to like twice the normal size. His eyes were all black and blue and were like almost swollen shut. And this actually makes more sense, because otherwise how would she get a phone call the very next morning saying that like Wayne was asking for her? So that's what Kelly testified to. Now, what makes this particular fact about the case a little murky is that there's no way to corroborate if this accident even happened. You see, apparently the hospital where Wayne was treated at was no longer in operation, and so I don't know if apparently hospital records just disappear into the ether when a hospital closes up. I don't know how that works, but there were no medical records to corroborate that this accident even happened. We just have Wayne and Kelly's testimony. So the defense also tried to point to the fact that Wayne was going through a very tough emotional time due to his divorce from Elizabeth. So the defense was trying to say, due to this brain injury, and like his documented mental health problems, that all of this was compounded by the fact that Wayne was, not doing well with the divorce, and that he was very bitter and angry at Elizabeth for keeping his son away and all that. However, Elizabeth testified at the trial, and, you're not going to be surprised to find out that she said Wayne actually wasn't a very attentive father at all, even when they were married. He had literally changed Max once. He had never fed him, never bathed him, and whenever he would start crying as a baby, Wayne would just hurry up and like pawn off Max on Elizabeth and wouldn't want anything to do with him. So kind of poking a hole a little bit in the defense's argument here. She also said there was an incident where her and her boyfriend at the time, who also had a child, they were going to make a special trip to Southern California. They were going to make a special trip to Southern California, do the whole theme park jaunt, which, by the way, is super fun. If you ever get the chance, I highly recommend. So anyway, Elizabeth and her boyfriend and Max and her boyfriend's kid were, going to come to California, and she had actually arranged like a whole day or two for Max to spend with Wayne. But Wayne spent like less than an hour with Max before just taking off. And she also said that after the divorce, she begged Wayne to have a relationship with his son, and that he never even exercised his visitation rights. Oh yes, Wayne had visitation to Max. So kind of poking all kinds of holes in the defense's arguments here. Lastly, the defense tried to say that, due to, his mental problems and his emotional turmoil, Wayne was very triggered by, like, mothers and children and, talks of children and motherhood and like, stuff like that. Like, that made him, quote, see red. And that all of the women that Wayne had murdered right before he had, quote, blacked out and murdered them, they had been talking about their children. They also claimed that, Wayne didn't mean to kill these women. He was really into sexual asphyxiation, and that when he, got out of his blacked out stage and realized that, and realized that they were, unconscious, he even attempted to do CPR on them. Now, it was also revealed at trial that Wayne had a string of sex workers that he had robbed, raped, and or beaten, but didn't kill. And in fact, at least one of them testified at Wayne's trial. She was given the moniker Sonoma County Jane Doe, so to keep her anonymity. I said it, anonymity. And she testified that Wayne had choked her several times during sex with a necktie, and that would then start like crying uncontrollably, and showed the sex worker a picture of Elizabeth and Max and said that his behavior was revenge against his ex-wife. Yeah. So Wayne's trial lasted 3 months, and it took the jury a little more than a week to come back with a guilty of first-degree murder on all counts. It is theorized that the reason the defense tried to, play the defense that they did was in the hopes of, getting Wayne convicted on, maybe some second-degree murder charges or something. That's a theory as to why his defense attorney chose the line of attack that he did. Now, during the penalty phase, Rod, Wayne's brother, asked for mercy for his brother. He begged for mercy because the death penalty was on the table, and he was begging for leniency for his brother. However, Patricia, Lynette, and Tina's family all testified that they wanted him to die. They were very upset. The only other person to ask who didn't ask for the death penalty was Lynette's brother, Bill, who said that he just wanted Wayne to rot in prison for the rest of his life. No other family member of Wayne's testified at the trial or even showed up. It was just Rod. The jury deliberated for about 2 weeks before coming back with the death penalty for Wayne. So afterwards, the jurors were asked how they had come to that decision. It seemed like what the jury really focused on was the, brutality of Wayne's crimes. That, above all else, was really what they focused on. They weren't really buying any of the defense's arguments. They didn't buy that, he had, a brain injury and, all these, mental problems that could explain why he did what he did. I'm not even sure if they believed the accident happened. But they said something that really solidified their decision to find him guilty was during the testimony of Patricia's father, Rodolfo Temez. Now, he was testifying about the use of sexual asphyxiation used on his daughter. And in the middle of his testimony, Wayne just burst out all of a sudden, "That's not true. That never happened." And it came just out of the blue, and he was so loud and booming that it caused the jurors to jump. They just were not expecting that. And that solidified in many jurors' minds that, Wayne was lying about what he remembered. They said that if he could say that that wasn't true and that's not how it happened, well, what else did you remember? I thought you blacked out, So it seems that's kind of, how the jury came to the death penalty for him. And Wayne said that he disagreed with the jurors' decision. He said that he was guilty of 4 accidental murders and that he didn't mean to kill anyone. So Wayne is still alive. He is sitting on death row at San Quentin State Prison in San Quentin, California. And in 2016, there was a news article that was about life on death row at San Quentin. And Wayne was one of the prisoners they had interviewed. And, so they talked to Wayne. So Wayne was quoted as saying, "I was completely for the death penalty before I came in here. And to tell you the truth, I would have much rather have been killed a long time ago than spend the last 18 years in solitary confinement. It's not fun." Well, Wayne, I don't think death row is really supposed to be fun. And look, I'm personally against the death penalty for a myriad of reasons. But one of the reasons that's relevant to this case is why should they get the easy way out? Forget that. No, make him sit in prison and think about what he did. Now, normally this would be the end of the case. However, I've got a little epilogue for you here. So let me put on my eyelash and I will be right back. Okay, I'm back. Sorry, I cannot put falsies on camera. So, if, you've been reading true crime cases, there's, an unfortunate fact that we are aware of, right? That sometimes these killers, particularly serial killers, they get admirers, right? I don't want to call them fans, But, that's kind of what they are. They're, quote unquote admirers of serial killers. I know. I don't know what is wrong with people. I know. Well, Wayne garnered himself such an admirer. Her name is Victoria Redstall, and y'all, let me tell you, this chick is a trip, all right? Like, just put her name into YouTube and see what comes up. So, Victoria insists, quote, "I'm nothing like those lunatics who seek out serial killers." Even though in the summer of 2006, when Wayne's trial was amping up, that's exactly what she did. Let me put on my other falsie, and I will tell you more about Victoria. So, summer of 2006, Wayne is at the West Valley Detention Center located in Rancho Cucamonga, California. Victoria was on a tour of the facility, and she bribed a guard to introduce her to Wayne. And she met Wayne, introduced herself, and after that, she would visit Wayne almost every day, sometimes staying as long as 3 hours. She did an interview with the LA Times describing what her and Wayne did on her little visits, and she said, Her and Wayne would play country songs, and that his voice gave her, quote, goose flesh. Oh my God. So yeah, she'd visit Wayne, they'd sing country songs, and he had such a wonderful voice. And like who is this Victoria chick? Well, she's British born. She is a one-time weather girl and a wannabe actress. She has nailed some very short bit roles in some minor films, and I think she's done some voiceover work. And she has said, quote, she finds it hysterical that a serial killer with an affinity for breasts would be so attuned to her, a busty girl who was a former spokesman for a breast enhancement supplement. Yeah, this is stuff that she's actually said. She's done interviews with the LA Times. You can go look it up. It's wild. So even though Victoria insists that she's not a serial killer groupie, there have been multiple sources that have contradicted her and said that she has always been attracted to killers and is just really an attention seeker. And so she ended up, kind of conversing with Wayne a lot, and she even attended his trial. And get this, she attended his trial with press credentials. So she claimed that she was making a documentary about Wayne, and it was going to be called either Serial Killer with a Conscience or Inside the Mind of a Serial Killer. And so, the court had to check her credentials. It was like, okay, are you really making this documentary? Are you even a filmmaker? And she is, guys. She does have a documentary under her belt. So the court looked up her past, and she had been in a documentary called Hover Me, The Making of Helicopter Girl. And in this documentary, Victoria would stand on the balcony of her apartment dressed in, some sexy lingerie and nightwear, while videographers and photographers took photos and videos of her while in a helicopter. Now, this all kind of caused a little bit of a commotion, and it attracted the attention of some local news helicopters. And her neighbors were not happy, to say the least. I read that they actually bullied Victoria to the point that she moved. I don't know how true that is, but I kind of hope it is, because this chick is just awful. So She got to enter the courtroom under the guise of press credentials, and she took lots of photos and videos of Wayne to the point that the court actually reprimanded her. She took so much. Her and Wayne had little hand signals that, they would give to each other during the trial, so Victoria could make sure that Wayne got her little love notes. When Wayne was convicted and he was on the prison bus being transported, she rode alongside his bus in her red convertible so that Wayne could see her and her blonde hair flying in the wind. Victoria has gone on to say that Wayne has, quote, got such a kindness to him and such a conscience. I trust him with my life. And, when people kind of remind her of like, do you know what he's in jail for? Like, do we need to tell you, like, the details of his crimes? She just brushes it off and is just like, we all have evil inside of us. Oh yes, Vicky, we all have the potential to strangle and murder and rape and dismember people. Like, she's a trip. Now, for her documentary, she said that she was going to go headhunting near the Mad River in the hopes of finding Jane Doe's head or skull. And when, victim advocacy groups rightfully called her out about how disgusting that was, she was just like, no, you don't understand. I'm trying to get closure for this family, okay? But I also, quote, want something exciting for my documentary. Yeah, she's a trip, like I said. Put her name into YouTube. You can actually see little clips of her documentary. I'm not even sure if it got made. I know the film production company that she initially said was going to do the documentary, they, when people contacted them, they were like, we don't know who this chick is. No, we're not doing a documentary with her. But there are clips of it on YouTube, and I don't know, man. I think she's gross. I think she does just want attention. Like, I saw one clip where she was, I think interviewing a sex worker who had an encounter with Wayne, and I don't know, man. She just came off just very fake, and I don't like her at all. I think she's gross. Like I said, look it up. Have fun with that train wreck. And yeah, that is the tale of Wayne Adam Ford, the supposed serial killer with a conscience. So what do you all think? Can serial killers have a conscience? Can they be redeemed? Can they feel remorse? And if you believe that, do you think Wayne qualifies as such? Let me know in the comments down below what you think. I would love to know whether you think Wayne should be the serial killer with a conscience or what. I would love to hear your thoughts. And I just hit my drawer. And yeah, that is it. I hope you enjoyed this true crime case. I hope I wasn't too confusing or anything. And yeah, be safe out there. Don't be a dick. And hopefully I will see you next time. Bye-bye.